Alright, so now I have renamed this to RES and now we'll work on our database. So in our data folder, I'm going to create a new file. Let's say entities. So what all entities we need? Why is it so small? 135. Alright. So first thing we need menu category. Okay. So public class menu category, which is going to have int ID, name of the category, and icon of the category. Okay, and this ID, this is going to be primary key for SQLite. So we will add this primary key data annotation on this, which should come from SQLite. So using SQLite and then primary key attribute, and we want this to auto increment from database side. So auto increment, this should also come from SQLite only. All right, menu category is ready. Next thing, we need menu item. Okay, here again we need an ID which will be primary key with auto increment. Then we need name of the menu item. Then we need icon of the menu item. After that we need short description of that menu item. After that we need a decimal price for that item. All right, so these are the ones we need for menu item. All right, now we need to map these two things together, the menu category and menu item. But the way our application is, one menu item can fall under multiple categories. So there is going to be one to many relationship from menu item to category. Okay, so one menu category can have multiple menu items. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that is also true. But one menu item can fall under multiple menu categories. So we can't have directly it inside this menu item. Instead, what we will need to do, we will need to have a separate table for this. All right. So we'll have public class, let's say menu item category mapping, something like this. Menu item category mapping. Okay. And here we can have one primary key property for this. So primary key auto increment, we are not going to use this. Then we are going to have two IDs here. One is going to be menu category ID and one is going to be menu item ID, which will come from these two tables. Save it and our menu category mapping table is ready. All right, now our basic tables are ready. Now we can display the data, but let's create other entities as well, which we are going to need in this application. So that is, we need to create our orders. Okay, so we need to have order and order item, these two entities. Let's create this. So public class order. In this we are going to have an ID. So public long ID. I'm using long ID. Primary key auto increment, yes. After that we'll have a date time when this order was being placed. So order date. Then we are going to have total items count, how many number of items were there in this order. Total item count, total items count. Let's see. Then we are going to use total amount paid. What was the total amount which was paid for this particular order, which will be of type decimal. Total amount paid. Then we are going to have one string where we will use our payment mode. What was the payment mode? Was it cash or online? You can modify this as per your need. Okay, now one order is going to have multiple order items. We'll say public class order item. In this, we are going to have an ID, which will be same primary key and auto increment. Now in this order item, we are going to have order ID so that we can map these two tables. So one order will belong to this order item. So one order will have multiple order items which are going to be here. So we have connected these two tables, these two entities. Now after order, we can have item ID, which is actually menu item ID. So item ID, then we will have our name, menu item name, icon, and price and quantity, because we want to display the exact quantity of that particular item which was added in some order. Okay, quantity, okay, quantity. All right. Now for our use case to show the amount of this order item, we can simply have one more property which will be of type decimal, which will be amount. But now this amount is going to be product of quantity and price. We need to multiply these two things. Okay, so there is no point of having this calculation delegated to the provider of this. Rather, we can simply have this computed property here. So here we'll say quantity times price. Now we are going to have one problem because this is SQLite database entity class. So we don't want this amount to go to database, because in database we have quantity and price. We want this just for displaying on the UI. So the point is we need to ignore this amount from the database. Okay. So in SQLite we can use ignore attribute for this. So we'll add ignore. Now what would happen? It will be, we can access this, but when SQLite is going to insert this data, it will simply ignore this item. It will not add this. It will insert, update, read, everything it will do with these properties, not this one. All right. So save it. Now all the tables, SQLite related entity tables are ready. Now next thing what I will do, I will simply move these to these separate class files in this data folder only. So let's start moving these. This is the approach I find easier to follow. I create all the classes in single file. Then I simply say control dot, control period, and then we have this move type to order item. It will simply move this to a separate class file here. This is the approach I follow, but you are free to follow creating separate classes from the beginning only. All right. So let me quickly move this. Menu category mapping, menu item, and menu category. Now we don't need this entities class because this is blank. We are not using this. So let's delete this and we are good now. All right. Now we can start working on our main database helper file, or maybe before that we can have our seeding data. Okay, that also, for that let's create a new class in this data only. In this data folder I'm going to create a new class file. So I'll say add class, let's say seed data. Okay, and in this I'll say public static class seed data, and I already have prepared data for this, so I'm going to use that. Let me copy it and paste it here. I took ChatGPT's help for this thing. So menu category mapping. No, what? Menu item category mapping. All right. So menu item category mapping. We are going to use this. Then we have menu item. Something is not right. What is not right? Okay, menu item. This we have this ambiguous class. Menu items is in there Microsoft Maui.controls.menu item as well. Okay, so we need to use our own menu item class. So for this, what we'll do, we'll simply use uh, our own namespace for this menu item here. So we'll say using menu item equals, we need this from this namespace, from our namespace, restaurant POS Maui dot data dot menu item. We want is to use this namespace. Remove all other. What is the problem? Didn't I add menu item like data class? Everything is fine. Menu item does not exist in here. Menu item, menu item, menu item. Okay, it is freaking out. Let me try to unload and reload this. So unload project, reload it. Let's open seed data again. Let's wait for it to come, and we are good now. Okay, now it is able to pick this up. So we don't need this using, right? Okay. All right, we are good. So for this data, I'm going to add this as a maybe JSON on GitHub, and I'm going to add link of that in the description. So you can get this data, or maybe you can ask ChatGPT to generate this data for you. All right. Cool. Now our entity is ready. Our seed data is ready. Now we can start working on our database access and database related logic, right? So let's create a new class here. You can name it whatever you want. For me, let's say database helper. Let's name it database helper. And let's do this. Let's create it as a static class. You can create it as instance, and you can maybe use singleton instance of this as well. If you want to have some maybe unit testing or something like that. I'm not going to have it. So static makes sense for me. All right. Here I'll have, when we have private static read only database path, let's say db path, and here we can use path dot combine. I want to have its constructor. Let's do this. Let's create it as an instance only, and in its constructor I'm going to have my db path. Here I'll say path dot combine. Okay, now I will get environment dot get folder path. I want the folder path of environment dot special folder dot local application data. So local application data folder. With this environment get folder path, we have complete folder path, and after that we can simply add our database name. It could be anything. So rest pos dot db3. All right. So now our db path is ready. Now we can use this db path to generate our database. Okay. So what we'll do, so here we'll simply say new SQLite async connection using SQLite. All right. And here we need to provide connection string, which is going to be our DB path. So DB path, comma, we can provide store date time as ticks, and we can provide SQLite open flags. So we are going to provide SQLite open flags here. SQLite open flags dot create. We want to allow it to create the database. And then this enum is actually a flag, so we can chain multiple flags. So SQLite open flag dot read and write. We need both operations, and let's maybe allow SQLite open flags dot shared guy. And now we are okay, we are good. We have this SQLite async connection ready. Now we will use this connection throughout this class, so it makes sense to create a variable outside of this. So private read only SQLite async connection underscore, we'll call it context or connection, and then we'll assign this underscore connections here. All right, now our underscore connection is ready, which has this SQLite async connection. Now after creating this, when we are closing our application, so it's good idea to dispose this connection. So for that, what we'll do on this database helper, we'll use iAsync disposable interface. We'll implement this interface. Here we have this dispose async method. Here, first thing, we'll simply check if this connection, if this is not null, then we'll simply say connection dot dispose, connection dot close async, and let's apply async here, and let's apply await here. So now we are good. All right. Now we will initialize our seed data. Let's create a method here. We'll say public async task seed data async. Okay, here we will get all our data to be seeded. So first we need our categories, okay, which we will get from our seed data dot get menu categories. Then we'll have our menu items from seed data dot get menu items. Then we are going to have our mappings, seed data dot get menu item category mappings. Okay, now we need to add this data to our database. So before doing this, or before creating this, let's create and be sure that we have all our tables ready. So for this, what we can do in this constructor only, after creating this connection instance, what we'll do, we'll simply say we can say underscore connection dot create table async. Here we can provide our table type, so menu category. Now this is async method, and in C# async constructors are not yet available, so we will not do this. What we will do, we will create a separate method where we'll say public async task, and here we'll say initialize database async, something like this. And here we'll simply say await and do this connection dot create table async, add menu category. The good thing is it create table if not exist, it executes this command. So if we are running this line multiple times, it will not break anything. It will simply check if this table exists, it will not touch it will simply return from here, and if this table does not exist, then it will create it. So let's copy this line a couple of times. So duplicate it. After menu category, we'll create menu item. Then we'll create menu item category mapping. Then we'll create order. Then we'll create order item. And now we are good. Alright. So initialized database is ready. Now we are here in seed data async. Here we have all these three data ready. Now we'll simply say await underscore connection dot insert all async, and what all, first we'll add our categories. So this will actually take all these categories and insert these into the database. Let's copy it. After categories, we have menu items. So it refers the type. So it will check the type of this category. So this is menu category. It will check this menu category table and add this data into that table. Same with this menu item and this mapping. So menu items. After that, we'll add our mapping. Now we are good. Now we will call it from somewhere, and this method might be not, we are sure that it is going to be called multiple times. Whenever we will open our app for the first time, it will simply run this. We'll add that logic, but this method is going to be executed multiple times, and if we have this setup, it will keep on adding, inserting the same data again and again whenever we are closing our application and open it again. Okay, so here what we should do, we should check if we already seeded it, if we already added this data into the database. If we already added it, we should not add this data, duplicate data in the database. So for this, what we can do in this seed data async, we will simply try to access the first category. Okay, here we'll say await connection dot table menu category table, and on this we'll say first or default async. Okay, here we're trying to access the first category. Then we will check if first category is not equals null. That means we were successfully able to get the first category, first data from this menu category table. If that's the case, we will simply return from here, because now we know that we already seeded the data. Database already seeded. Alright, so when it will come for the first time, very first time, it will come here, it will try to get the first category. Because we don't have anything in database, it will be null. This condition will be false. It will continue, it will get the categories menu items mapping, insert into the database and continue. Now when second time it comes to this method, it will check this first category, it will try to access the first category, and now this will get the first category, because now we have our database ready and we have these categories inserted into the database. Then it will check, it will try to get the first category, it will not be null, it will directly return from here, because now it will be sure that we already have data, so we are good to go. Cool. So we have our database setup ready. Now we just need to call this initialized database and this seed database async from somewhere. We need to figure out where that somewhere is, from where we should call it. We should initialize database and we should seed our database. So this thing should get called when we are starting application, right? When we're starting the application, if application was, we are starting it for the first time, or if it was closed and we are opening it. So the main entry point of the application is this app.xaml. Here we have app.xaml.cs file, this file. Here we have a method which we can override from the application, which is on, what was that? It should be on create, right? on start. Sorry. So on start, when application is getting started, then this method is going to be called. Save it. And now here, let it leave this base dot on start. Here we'll initialize our database, initialize and seed database. This is the perfect place to seed and initialize our database. Now we need to access that database helper. Now this helper does not make sense because now this is not an helper or utility method. This is actually instanced class which we will have as a singleton instance. But good, so let's rename this something like, let's say, database service. Okay, so database service. First thing, we need to inject this, register this in our dependency container in our MAUI program.cs. Before builder.build, we'll say builder.services.add singleton. We need single instance of this database service throughout our application. And now we are good. Now what we will do, we will simply inject that database service in our app. So here, let's use database service. We will inject it. We will have it in a private read-only field. And on this on start, we'll say database service dot initialize database async. And then we'll say database service dot seed database async. Okay. And we will await these methods and we'll change this on start to async. Now because these two are always going to be called one after another in the same order, always. So we have two approaches. We can maybe move this seed data async to initialize database async. Maybe this is also a part of this only. So we'll go to our service. Here, after creating all these things, we can call this seed database method here only. Seed data async. Cool. And now from here, we can simply remove this seed data call. And one more thing we can change in the seed data async, instead of public, we can make it private. Now we are good. Our database creation and seed logic is ready. Now let's do this. Let's put a breakpoint here, and in database service, this constructor, initialize database, and then seed data. Let's try to run it and let's see the flow. If it is coming here and if it is creating the database and seeding it and all this stuff, if it is doing it or not. It is saying something that this is already installed. If we press yes, it will uninstall the current app and it will install a new one. Yes, we need this. Oh, because we changed namespace and all that stuff. Maybe that's why. Constructor, complete db path, user, Abhay app data, local, whatever it is. Connection, it created this connection. Continue. Now we are in this app. We are on start. Initialize. So it is creating these tables. Now we are in on seed data async, first category. Now we see first category is null because we don't have any data yet. Categories, we have 5 categories. Menu items, we have 55 menu items, 55 mappings. Insert all, insert all, insert all, continue. And now we should be good. Let's close this and try to run it again. This time, let's see. Constructor, app, on start, and we are here. Now, as I already said that these create tables, these are okay to re-execute because it simply checks if we already have table, it will not do anything. See data async. Now first category, we actually have this first category. If you see, I don't know if you can see it, this is very small, but We can see icon drink.png id 1 and name beverages. So we have this data in database now. Now it will simply this condition, if condition will be true, and it will not try to reinsert this data. It will not duplicate this data. Continue from here, return from here, and we are good. So this is how it will work. All right. Now we have this basic initial seed data ready. Now we can start working on our home page. Okay. So, but for home page, we will need some data. So let's create the methods in our database service for those data. First thing, we will need list of categories. All right. So let's create a method here. We'll say public async task of menu category array get menu categories async. All right. And from here, we'll simply say await underscore connection dot table. Which table? Menu category table. Okay, we are getting all data. Then we'll say to array async. And using this, we are actually returning the complete list of menu categories. All right. After this menu categories, we will need menu items on the basis of currently selected category. Okay. Now we have one problem. We can't do the same thing we have done for this. So here we need public async task. We need an array of menu items. We'll say get menu items async. Here we need category ID. Now in our menu item table, so connection dot table menu item table, we simply can't do this. We can't apply any where condition. The reason is we don't have category ID directly in our menu item class, right? Because we need many to many mapping. So one menu item can fall under multiple categories. So for that, what we will do, we will use SQL query. Okay, so we'll generate a SQL query here for this. Here we'll say we'll first change the name of the method get menu items by category async, so that it is intuitive. It makes sense that okay, this method will return menu items for this particular category. Okay, so here we'll generate our query, SQL query. All right, so here we'll simply say select star from, we have the mapping in our menu item category mapping table. So we'll say select star from menu item table, and we'll apply a inner join on this table. So this menu item, let's say as menu only, and on this mapping, let's say as mapping, and on this we'll say on menu dot id equals mapping dot, in this mapping table we have menu item id. So we'll apply this thing. Let's move it to the next line so that it is readable. And then we will simply apply a where condition. Here we'll say mapping dot menu category ID equals this category ID. Now we won't directly use it here like this. Instead, we'll simply have query placeholders to get rid of SQL injection basically. Okay, we are going to use parameter as query. So in SQLite, we can simply add question mark and then we'll supply parameter when we'll execute this query. All right. Now star, we don't need star from everything. We need star from menu. So menu dot star. So we need all the fields from this menu item. All right. Now our SQL query is ready. Now what we can do, we can simply say var menu items equals, here we could say await connection dot, we have query async method. And here we can provide type, table type, return type basically. So this will be menu item. And then we can supply query or SQL query. And it also expects params object array of arguments. So for this query, if we have any parameters, we can pass those after this. So yes, we have one parameter in this query, which will be this category ID. So after query, we'll say category ID. Now we will have these menu items ready. But this is of type list. But we are returning an array. We can simply say return menu items. We are simply using this collection expression with destructuring these items. So now this is an array representation of this list. All right. And what else we need right now? So we have categories and we have items. I guess we are good, right? Yeah. Save it. Let's quickly see if we are getting these items. If this is working as we are expecting it to work. So let's do this. After this seed data, let's do this just for testing. I'm doing this just for testing that our query is fine. It is working fine and we are getting the data. So here we'll say simply menu items equals await get menu items by category, and we can provide any category ID. Let's say category ID 1. Let's put a breakpoint here, run it. I just want to see if we are getting this data. I should have removed all other breakpoints. Okay, we are here. Let's check menu items and we have 10 items. Cool. That means our query is working fine. Great. Stop and then just remove this line because we have added this just to test if this query is working. Save it. And now we are good. Let's remove all the breakpoints. Disable all breakpoints. Save it. And now we are good. Now we can start working on our UI.